So I want to try to keep this as simple and as quick as I can to help you absorb the information. So we're just going to start with the first 9, the Aleph through the Tet. And these are how you will find them in your concordance or in your interlinear Bibles or however you're reading your Hebrew words. So we have Aleph, Bet, Gimmel, Dalet, Hey, Wa, Zayin, Het, and Tet. So Aleph is a picture of an ox head. Oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. Okay, so it's a picture of an ox head. Typically, when we see horns, we think of bad things, but it actually is a representation of like the shining glory that comes from you when you're in the presence of the Father. And Moses was depicted a few times with horns. I mean, a few people were, but the Aleph stands for who you're yoked to, who you're being taught by, led by. It could mean, as with a lot of these things, you'll see these pictographs can go either way. It's whatever you are personally being led by, whether it be a good thing or a bad thing. Now, Bet is a picture of a house. And interesting thing about the Bet, so the men would be here and the women would be here. This is the model of the house. So there would be a few women, a bunch of kids. Now, they were separated. The men were by the entrance and the women were in this protected area on the right. So if anybody ever came to intrude, the men were right there protecting the women inside of the home. So I think it's very interesting to note that, if you're a mom, you know how chaotic it can be inside of the household. Well, the name for father is Abba, right? And the name for mom is, oops, I almost mixed those up, is Ima. So, Ab, which is the leader of the house, is the father. And the leader of the chaos is Ima, the mother. So the mother is the leader of the chaos. Look at all the chaos going inside there. She is leading that chaos and he is leading the entire thing. So this is what I mean by when you start to learn the Aleph Bet and the pictographs, they literally start to come to life and you can see more meaning in things. It's so awesome. So the next one is number 3, which is Gimmel. It is a picture of a foot. It looks just like a check mark. It is a leg and a foot. It's also kind of depicted the opposite way, showing like a horse or a camel, which is, it's a messenger. They would travel by camel or by horse or by foot to get the messages across. A reward or, a debt collector coming to collect his debt. The Dalet is a picture of a swinging door. Some people draw it with a swinging motion, things that dangle. There's body parts that do that. There's always an adult model with these things as well. Some people also just draw it as a triangle, which is how they depict the delta in Greek, which is also the D. I kind of like something a little in between, just like a little boop. To me, that works the best. But a door, it is a portal. It is something that you walk through or you go through, which could be, I'm going through a lot right now. That could be also the depiction of the door. The hay is a spirit man with his arms raised. It is a picture of Melta or like revelation, like that aha moment. Thankfulness and praise. There is like a crying out in the spirit. It's the number 5, which we think of the 5 senses. It is also depicted as a window. I don't know if I said that or not, but it's the breath. It is the spirit, the ruach. Number 6 is a picture of a tent peg, and it is showing, it represents a man or to add something to. So let me go back to the hay. The hay, when you see it in front of a word in Hebrew, it'll mean the whatever. If you see it at the end of a word, it will make the word feminine. Va or wa, when you see it at the beginning of a word, it means and. So it's adding something to whatever you're talking about. So if I wanted to say the dad, you know, Abba is dad. So if I wanted to say the dad, I would say ha Abba. If I wanted to say and dad, it'd be va Abba. So it's just added on to the word, if that makes any sense. Next one is Zayin, number 7, and it is a picture of a plowing tool. You could, I like to draw this little extra piece because to me it makes it look more like a plowing tool, but usually it's just depicted something like that. And it means to divide or separate the land, to put something in it, to nourish, to grow, to be weaned. It could mean quite a few different things. Also has an adult model as well, you know, a plowing tool, you know, has its adult models. So you put the seed into the ground just as the man puts a seed into the woman and it grows, you know, the child. Number 8 is Chet, and it is a picture of a ladder or a fence. So some people will draw it on its side completely, which more depicts like a fence. Some people draw it straight up. I kind of do it a little bit, I guess, at an angle. It really doesn't matter how you do it. It's that you're getting the point across. So this is to divide or to separate. What I think of it as, you know, in the olden times, they would use trees. You know, if my tree falls over, I'm going to use the logs of my trees and maybe some like thorny bushes to create, you know, a fence to protect my family and my animals that, you know, might be inside of this. So this is to protect, to divide, to separate. I've also heard it as like Jacob's ladder, going up or going down, a DNA strand, you know, going up the strand or down the strand. You'll see that the Father will give more revelation on what these things mean as their function. We have to kind of let go of our Western mindset of, you know, descriptive understanding, the physical. These are more about what is being done. They're looking at a more broad explanation. So Tet, number 9, this is my absolute favorite. It is a protected mark. So a protected mark, if you guys see this one, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. This is the mark. Now, this is what is so cool about this one. If you know anything about the Native Americans, this symbol is actually very, very popular. It is called the medicine wheel. And this depicts the 4 corners coming back together and healing the nations. Healing the nations. So this is a picture of a basket, typically. The Tet is the 4 corners of the earth. It is X marks the spot. It is a protected mark. So we are looking at this T. The end of the Aleph Bet is done with a Ta. Okay, and the Ta is the same t sound. Some would actually say as a TH. But this, not with a circle, but just that mark right here, just that alone, is the Ta. This is the Tet. So there's a mark and there's a protected mark. This is at the end of the Aleph Bet. This is in the midst of the Aleph Bet. So to me, it makes sense, you know, that the Father would put his protected mark in the midst of his Aleph Bet, just like he put the tree of life in the midst of the garden. So we need to, the Father, when I was doing some research on the Aleph Ta, he had showed me about the Tet and said the first shall be last and last shall be first. So there's something more about this. I don't think it's a coincidence. Coincidence is just a coincidence. So I really think that the Father was saying something big about the Native American way of doing things. And I think the Tet is a big part of this. So the tet is a basket, like I said, X marks the spot. It could be used as, I want to say I have seen it as a snake as well, which would be very interesting, like a snake in a basket. But these are the main ones, 1 through 9. So the next set that we're going to do is going to be 10 through 90. So I'm going to write those again the same way. So I'm just going to erase this. Should I erase it or should I just... We'll see. I think it would be beneficial to not erase it, just so that way we can kind of see everything together. So we'll do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, and 90. Okay, so the next section, 10 through 90, is going to be Yod, Kaf, Lamed, Mem, Nun, Samach, Ayin, Pei, Sadi. Now, each one of these ones, well, we'll get into the other parts of it. So these ones are as follows. Yod is, a picture of a hand. It's a hand and an arm. It means to throw, to worship, to protect, to guard, to pull away, anything that you could picture to do with your arm and your hand. A kaf is a picture of open palms. I know it's kind of hard to see it in this. It took me a while to actually understand the picture of this, but I picture it like if you hold open your palm, here's your one side of your hands, there's the other side of your hands and your thumbs. Kind of like, or maybe the inside of your hands or the outside, there's one half of your hand, there's the other half of your hand, two hands cupped together. It could mean to conceal something, to give something, to, you can conceal it in your hand or you give things, whatever you could do with your hand. But also the palm of your hand and the bottom of your foot, we call it the sole of our foot. It's the sole of your hand. So it's also, the inner meaning is soul. 30 is Lamed, and it is a picture of a shepherd's staff. Once again, I'm pretty sure like this has been depicted both ways, but I draw it this way. It's not a very good one. This way. So the shepherd's staff is, what the tool that the shepherd will use to, pull the lamb back from the edge, or to keep the lamb, in line. You don't beat the lamb with it, but if it's walking off, you have your staff, you could just very gently, direct it where it needs to go. So it's what you are being directed by. This is like the inner meaning, what you're being taught by, what you're being led by. Kind of similar to the Aleph, but the Aleph is like the official leader of it. This Lamed is more what is assisting, what you're leaning on, things like that. Like you would lean on your staff if you're tired. So a lot of people will be able to look at these and see other things. When we get down here to the Samak, there's actually something very interesting a friend showed me, but we'll get to that in a second. So 40 is Mem, and Mem is a picture of water. Water, chaos, darkness, the unknown. These are all things that go along with water. And mightiness. I think it's also worth mentioning 40 weeks is the amount of time it takes to go through labor, and then your waters burst forth and you give birth. So I thought that was also very, very interesting. I was always really scared of the water. Cold, dark water, you don't know what's in there. It's the unknown, it's scary. But as you get older and you conquer your fears, what was once unknown becomes known, and you're not so scared of it anymore. So Noon is a picture of a seed, and it's got the little seed and then the little sprout that comes out and goes into the earth. Once again, it is also an adult model, for an adult male's seed that goes and creates the baby. So Samach is, let me do that again. Samach is a picture of a thorn. A thorn. It could also mean protection, to surround, like a force field. And this one didn't really make sense to me in the beginning. It took someone who has never seen a pictograph in her life, and she helped me to see, have the mind of a child. Look at these pictures and see as the children would see. Don't be bogged down by what we think we know. My girlfriend said, that kind of looks like a power pole. Well, what does power do when you touch it? Stings you, right? Electrocutes you, shocks you. Same thing, if I get pricked by a bush, it's that thorn, it like shocks you, it stings you, it catches you off guard. Same thing with these towers, they have a force field around them, an invisible field that sends off this electromagnetic pulse, right? Or this electromagnetic field that is around each one of these power poles. We can't see it with our naked eye, but it has the potential to, send and receive messages, to put a force field that is not seen to the naked eye. So that was very, very interesting. 60 Samach. Okay. Ayin is a picture of an eye, and it means spiritual sight, wisdom. Once again, there's two eyes. A lot of people are like, oh, the third eye, the third eye. I don't know if it's a third eye, but we have a left and a right eye. We have a physical eye and a spiritual eye. And which one are we feeding and allowing to grow and to see with? Pei is actually very similar to the ayin. It is an open mouth. But what I also see is a closed eye. So a closed eye is an open mouth. And an open mouth is a closed eye. That's what I see. It could be something different, but what it is depicted as typically is a mouth. And, the mouth is the edge of the stomach. This is also a pit. So I represent this as, the pit, the mouth leads to the stomach. This is the pit. The edge of the pit is your mouth. And Sadi is a picture of a path or something on its sides. So, we think this windy path. We can take the straight and narrow path, or we can, go our own way. It also means righteousness. You pick a side. What side are you going to be on? Are you going to be on the side of righteousness or unrighteousness? So it's depicted as all of those things. I usually, when I see it, I see a path. So I just realized I did those in the opposite color. So I'm going to fix that before we go on, and then we will do the remaining 100 through 900. Okay, so 100 through 900. Now, typically you would see it would end at 400 with the ta, but the final 5 are going to be the final sophites that are already in the Hebrew language. I'm just adding them into this, and I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, so now we're going to do the remaining ones. We've got Kuf, Resh, looks kind of like a dalet, but it's got a curve. Shin, and Ta. Now we're going to do the final sophites, which there's actually just a few of them. It's Kaf, Mem, Nun, Pei, and Sadi. So we've got Kaf, which is the same. It just goes straight down. They all pretty much just go straight down. Except for the Mem. So we've got Mem is more like a square. I don't know. Then we have our noon. And then we have our, oops, tried to write the pictograph. Then we have our pay, and we have our sadi. Okay, so the kuf, change this here. The kuf is a picture of the sun at the horizon. It's the place between light and dark. A renewing. It kind of really depends on how you want to look at it. Some people see it as a crown. The main function though is light and dark, like a balance. Next one, it's a little difficult for me. It is a picture of a man's head. That is a terrible man's head. Okay, let's try that again. Good enough. That's as good as it's gonna get. So Resh is a man's head. It is his headship, his thoughts. Also, we look at our head as our thoughts and our hand as, our works, but in the Eastern, it's kind of switched around a little bit. Your forehead, what's on your forehead, you can't hide. It's there for everybody to see. While in your hand, it is something that you can close and conceal. So you can kind of look at it either way, but mainly we look at this like who our headship is, who we're being led in our minds by, or what is in our minds, the man's head. Also, it could also be viewed as, our mind has the left and the right brain, which is also, once again, that balance between the two, if we choose to have it, or an imbalance if we're not taking care of ourselves properly. Shin is a picture of fire or teeth. It means like a pair or the two or the other one, to separate, to press down. These are all the different meanings for shin. Ta, like we talked about earlier, is just the mark. And these ones here, they're the same things that we had seen before. So kaf is still kaf. The pictograph doesn't change. Mem is still mem. It doesn't change. Noon is still the seed. Pei is still the mouth. And sadi is still the path. So those ones stay the same. But here's the interesting part about this. So I should have left more room at the top. But this is... and I should change this color. So, this is our... Alright. So this is our archetype. This is what everything is going to be based on. This is our inner meaning or our spiritual meaning. And this is our outer or physical meaning. So everything is going to be based off of each one of these. Looks like I messed that one up right there. I'll go a little bit deeper into this, but this is why I wanted to write it this way. It just makes it a little bit easier for what I'm going to try and explain next. So we can look at this, reading it from right to left. We can look at this as this is telling us something. This archetype, leading with the Aleph and the Yod and the Kuf, they're actually saying something. I'm not adding anything to this but what was already here. And this is what I mean by the Father. He gives his instructions. If you have ever heard of somebody going through the Aleph Bet, they will read the Aleph Bet. So I can read it from the beginning all the way through to the end. And it tells a story. It is a story of salvation. But I'm also convinced that I could start at the end and go backwards. I could go sideways. I could go diagonal. It doesn't matter. The Father has hidden his word inside of his word. And this is what should be written on the tablets of our heart. And, if you seek, you shall find. He wants us to find this buried treasure. treasure is meant to be dug for. That's why he buried it. So when we would come looking for, the breadcrumbs left by the side of the trail, we would see these beautiful messages that he's given to us. Words of encouragement and directions for some of us. I'm a Thomas. Bless those who have the faith to just believe on belief alone. I had the faith of a mustard seed, but in reality, I needed to stick my fingers in those gaping holes in order for me to really understand. And the Father will meet you there. Don't beat yourself up because of it. Don't beat somebody else because they need this extra oomph. I asked him to give me direct instructions, and he gave them to me. And I just want them to bless somebody else. You don't have to just take my word for it. You can look it up for yourself, and he will show you. All you have to do is truly seek. Seek and ye shall find, and never stop seeking. Never stop knocking on the door, because he's ready to answer. He just wants to see what your heart posture is while you're knocking. So one more thing I need to add is Aleph isn't just one, it is also 1,000. And we actually know this because it tells us this in the concordance. And I know a few people are going to be like, well, how do you know that's what all these things mean? I will add a little video to show you how you can search for these things yourself with your concordance, or online if you don't have a concordance. It's actually very, very easy. And, this isn't thus saith Heather. This is the Father's language. I personally don't believe Hebrew itself was, the first language, or Aramaic. I believe it was something like a combination of everything. I believe it to be called Edenics, but that's a conversation for another time. For now, I will just show you how you can look up each one of these meanings yourself. There's actually a couple of different ways that we could look this up. If you know your Aleph Bet, you could go ahead and just type in whatever you're looking for. If not, you might have to go by these Strong's numbers. But so we'll just do this one for now. I can see how many times the Aleph, Lamed, and Pei was used in each one of the books. So you can look through that way, or, go to tools and examine each one of them. So this one says 505. So H505 is the Aleph, Lamed, Pei. But I already did this one, so I know that it starts at 502. So we'll just go to H502. So to learn, to teach, I would always go down to the Hebrew Chaldee lexicon too, because they have some pretty good definitions there too. To accustom oneself, to be accustomed. So you can just look through each one of them like this, and then as you go, just keep going to the next Strong's. So to make thousandfold, to bring forth, cattle, oxen, and farming, singular, the first letter, Aleph and Alpha, so 1,000, and you can just keep going. So this one goes all the way to 507 for Aleph. And you can just look it up that way. So this is how I get my, the majority of my definitions for the pictographs. The literal letters will give you the meaning of the words. It is one of the coolest things to see. Once you start learning these things, the letters become alive. I feel like I watch them dance on the page. It is so awesome to see. So real quick, we're just going to do Beit. So I think it all depends on how you spell it. So this is another, you could do Beit Yod Ta, right? Let's just see what that one is. Let's see here. So Beit. Household, home, temple, prison, place, family, dungeon, shelter, human bodies, Sheol, the abode of light and dark, land of Ephraim. So you see how there's inward, it's an inwards, a metaphor for inwards, descendants, household affairs, things that happen inside the house. So these things, this is pretty awesome to help you expand your understanding of each one of the Hebrew words because they get very detailed. Sometimes they're easy to overlook because, well, English has kind of taught us how to do that. But we can go through each one of these and see for ourselves how these words were used. And this is the really interesting thing. So here we use the Beit Yod Ta, right? But that ta can also, that T sound can also be made with a tet. So let's look at the tet. Oh, there's no tets in that one. What about just Beit Tet? Beit Ta. And also I want to point out, just because nothing is showing up when I type that in does not mean that that's not a word, that those don't mean something. As a matter of fact, we can go here and do this one. Bet. Beit Yod Tet. Bit. A bite, a bit. So these ones, just because it doesn't say anything in the Strongs doesn't necessarily mean, oops, where'd I go? Doesn't necessarily mean that it's not a word. It's just not a Strong's word. So I do want to show you this though. So the Beit Yod Tet is house, right? What if we take the Yod out? So it's still the Beit Ta. So it's Ba'at, which is like Beit, right? It just doesn't have that E sound. Well, those little dashes and lines and circles, dots, whatever you want to call them, those are called nikuds, and those are what make the vowel sounds, not necessarily the letters. So this word actually means daughter. So Beit Ta means daughter, which totally makes sense because your house, your home contains the daughter who grows up to be the mother, who, if you look at this in a simple example, which you'll begin to learn and to see this throughout the study, the Beit is your house, your temple. So your seed grows inside of your house. Your children grow inside of your house. So another model for Beit or for Ba'at is a stomach. It is what houses a baby. You know, just like this one says prison, or Beit said prison as well as house. Well, a prison is a house for prisoners. So same thing, your womb is a house for your unborn child. So these are just temporary dwellings, basically. So you can take down the walls of what English has taught us and don't only focus on what we know the words to be in English, but what the function is. That's more of the Eastern mindset and way to look at things.